Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and holy shit, I'm on to my final guest of the podcast. When I started this thing, I really wanted to get Seth Morrison to be my first guest ever. And while you'll hear why, he told me no 10 years ago, and I expected that. I didn't think Seth was going to share his life and times with me on some unproven platform. Not because it was me or an unproven platform, because interviews like this are not what Seth is about. Seth is all about skiing, and when he's not doing that, he's married, he has a long list of house projects, and he bikes when he can. But he doesn't do interviews. So I messaged him on Instagram a few months ago and said that I would always regret if I didn't ask him to be on the podcast one last time. And it would be an honor for me to close out the show with him. I hit send, and not a minute later, I get a weird ring on my phone, and it's from Instagram. I walk outside of diecutstickers.com, and that's where I work, and that's where you can order stickers from me that will keep my health insurance paid. All you have to do is email me at mike.powell@diecutstickers.com. But anyways, I answer that Instagram call, and it's Seth Morrison, and he's in Chamonix, and we talked for 41 minutes. I know that because I saved a screenshot of the call because Seth Morrison called me. And while I get excited to hear from Seth, we do have a relationship, and it's not like I freak out or lose my shit when I talk to him. But it's more the idea of Seth the Icon making time for me. And I don't know how much he listens to the show, but I know he does here and there. And when he brought Ange up in the conversation, I cried on the call, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but I remember thinking to myself, wow, that was really nice, and that's exactly what I needed to hear today. What else I needed to hear that day was Seth saying that he would do the podcast and that he should be a 2-part episode. But really, Seth needs 4 parts to tell his story the way I want to. But I don't have 4 episodes left, so I have to do it in 2. And in this one, I only get into like 1997, so when I record episode 2, I may just have to bounce around to the things that I want to talk about. And in these intros, I usually talk about my life and times and what's going on in my world and beyond. And for the first 6.5 years, that was easy. I had nothing going on but a podcast, my family, enjoying life, and making memories. Then my wife got cancer. And for 3 years, you had to endure me talk about the brutal realities of our lives, and I sugarcoated the shit out of that because Ange really didn't want me sharing about her life. But it was my life too, and I use this podcast as an outlet, and it really helped me. It was like my little bit of therapy. So thank you for dealing with those painful intros, and thank you for all the nice messages over the years. You have no idea how much they helped and meant to me. Grief is a crazy thing, and for some reason I found comfort in hearing from and chatting with strangers about this whole deal. But it was really hard to talk with friends and family about it because I'd always cry so much. And it's funny, even now, I find I sometimes have more fun when I go to bars where I don't really know many people there, and I make friends at the bar. This way I don't have to talk to people about Ange or think about shared memories or look at people and see that look in their face that lets me know they feel sorry for me. So I go out by myself a lot, and I've been such a local at my karaoke bar that they brought in the beer I like to drink, and I may even start hosting karaoke once a week just to make myself leave the house. And that's a lie. I do leave the house, but it's usually at like 10 p.m. when I'm sitting at home watching TV feeling like a loser and realize I need to go out. So I walk up the street to my karaoke bar, I crush 3 beers, I sing 2 karaoke songs, and I head home. But now that the opportunity has been presented for me to host, I may just do that. It'll keep me staying out all night long. I probably won't sing. I'll just use karaoke as practice for my live events. Plus, I'll drink free beer and make friends as well. And if I do it, I'll definitely post it on my socials so you can be harassed and entertained by me on the microphone in between karaoke singers. And I'll let you know all about that. I do that at the Yen War, or at least the old Yen War. Anyways, how did I get here? I was talking about my intros, and while I have had a lot of sad stuff in them, what's cool is that I have a documentation of the past 10 years of my life on a weekly basis. I'm not sure I'll go back and listen to them, but I'm glad I have them. I'm also glad that while I'm not political in my real life, I've been very open about how I feel about our leadership in this country on this podcast. I'm not going to go on a rant here because this is all about Seth Morrison, but I do hope our president dies of natural causes while you are listening to my conversation with Seth. And I hope he is not listening when it happens. He doesn't deserve to hear about Seth Morrison. You do. And before I get into my second to last interview with my final guest, I need to thank my sponsors who make this show happen. For these last 2 episodes, the brands that make the Powell Movement happen are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Zip Fit Ski Boot Liners, and my new business, interviewofyourlife.com. The website launches on October 1st, but you're not here for any of that. You're here for the skier that changed big mountain skiing, the one dude all other modern-day skiers look up to. This is the guy that went bigger than everyone else and brought high-consequence tricks to the big mountains, the one that got the loudest cheers at all the movie premieres. He changed the game over and over throughout the years. I am talking about my favorite skier ever, Seth Morrison. Well, how are you doing?
Just living life, man. Waiting for winter. Well, I shouldn't say waiting. There's plenty to do.
Like house projects until the snow falls?
Pretty much, yeah. I haven't even really ridden my bike this year at all. So a couple times while I was waiting on some work on my car. And other than that, just a slave.
A slave to the house so you can ski in?
Yeah, I played around too much, man. I had to fix stuff and things are so expensive, and getting somebody to come and do it is another thing. So might as well just do it yourself if you got the time.
I hear you, and you can figure out anything on YouTube these days, so I'm sure that helps.
You got that right. I changed an alternator yesterday with YouTube.
Oh, whoa. That's crazy.
Nuts and bolts, man. It's pretty easy.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump into this, and I wanted to start my whole podcast with you back 10 years ago, and you said I wasn't going to get famous off your back, and I never expected you to do the podcast anyway, so it didn't really matter. But it would have been cool to do the show in the beginning, and now you doing it for my last episode, it's like really fucking cool because I'm able to end this thing exactly how I want with like the one guest I wanted to start it. It's just I'm not going to grow the show with you, which doesn't even matter because I'm going to end it and feel stoked whenever I look back that I have you doing it. But why wouldn't you do a podcast back then? And what made you open up to doing one now?
Back then, I don't know. I didn't really care to do those kind of things. And basically my career was over anyway. And now I have nothing to share but what I'm doing, and it doesn't do anything for me by doing the podcast, and really just doing it for you, bro.
Well, that is almost like to bring a tear to my eye, dude. That is so fucking cool, man. And I appreciate you doing it. And I think, though, if I'm harassing you to do podcasts, I'm guessing that there's other ski brands over the years that have wanted you to be a pro skier again. How many people have you had to turn down in the past decade?
Yeah, at the beginning, there was quite a few, but it wasn't really any serious offers. And then the last couple of years, it's once a year. Somebody knocks on your door, but at the end of the day, it's not really worth it. What's your freedom worth, The name comes with extra work, unfortunately. So that's part of fame.
Have you ever said, hey, I'll be part of your program, just I won't do anything, I'll send you one picture a year?
It's usually more than that.
Yeah, I know. But
and it's not really worth the money, and it's the middle of the good part of the season when you'd rather be skiing. And there's other times to be doing the work, not like during the prime time of skiing. So I'd rather go skiing than do that nonsense.
So you pretty much disappeared over the past decade and have been living for yourself, doing the things that you want to do, which is amazing. But there was one thing about you maybe 4 years ago that I saw. There was a big Mountain Gazette article about you. I read it. I can't remember it because I don't think you were involved in it and I don't own it. But how did that one happen?
Oh, I have no idea, man. I never talked to these guys.
Do you get all pissed off when you see that?
I just think it's funny that they even care. And I think it's funny that people care what I'm doing. I always have people a few times a year, especially once it's a ski season, asking what gear I'm using and things like that. Looking for recommendations, but it's like, why should I bother?
I mean, you're one of those guys, though, that everyone looks to as the king of the sport. But in your prime, if you asked you would be like, yeah, I'm not even that good.
Well, that's how I look at it today. With the environment of skiing in Europe, it's just every time you think you're doing something, there's somebody going way beyond what you're doing.
But that's a whole new world for you. When you were here, you were like the adrenaline-fueled ski guy that was in all the ski movies. But over there, you're mountaineering in places where you can really die on an easy thing if you're not paying attention. And you have to learn so much more over there, right?
Oh, definitely. And still learning, and with the conditions always changing. And over there, it's way more glacier, and it just adds to the danger. Like here in Colorado, you're just worried about avalanches, but there you're worried about rockfall, falling in a crevasse, avalanches. And there's just way more people out there doing it. And it's a way different mentality. Like here you have some guy yelling at you, "Oh, you skied on top of me." But over there in Europe, there's people skiing on top of you all day long. And it's way bigger runs, and you get used to it and how to manage being around lots of people.
So everywhere's like a European lift line that you're being cut off in?
It's not really a lift line. You're just using the lift to access the terrain. But then once you're out there, when it's busy, there can be 100 people out there on something you're trying to do. Because there's people climbing, or there's people climbing and skiing, or there's people coming from another country on the other side of the border where you're at. There's a lot going on.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump back into the beginning of your life, and you might not want to talk about the early stuff, but I always do on these podcasts. I think you were born in Kentucky, then you were raised in Des Plaines, Illinois, or however that's pronounced. And I think it's your mom, your dad, and your sister until you're 6. Your dad splits. Looking back on your life now, have you figured out what kind of impact not having a dad had on you?
Well, eventually I had a stepfather, and I learned a lot from him, and I appreciate everything he did for me, because I could understand having to put up with somebody else's kids. That makes any sense. But he wasn't too into my skiing at the end of high school. But once he saw what I was doing, like with doing the extreme comp in Crested Butte, then him and my mom embraced it more.
So you had a dad. It was just your stepdad.
Yeah, but it was, you don't look at this person as your dad when you're a kid, right? You're just like, who's this guy?
Yeah, totally.
And you don't really want to listen to what he has to say. But, we're not the same kind of people, and nobody ever is. But I look at him now, and he has done a lot for me.
Well, that's awesome. I didn't think you had anyone, but it sounds like you did there. But with your real dad, did you ever reach out to him later on in life, or did he ever reach out to you when you got ski rich and famous?
Oh, no. I think my mom sent him some like Freeze magazines or something that I was on the cover of a long time ago. And I think my sister tried to track him down one time, but I don't know if she ever found him. And then I just found out maybe at the beginning of this year that the guy died like a year ago. So it's just somebody you never really knew. You just kind of have some memories of when you were young. And one time when I was driving home, like maybe 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I thought I saw some guy who looked like him driving up into where I live up here with Illinois license plates, because I think that's where the guy lived. And I didn't think about it till later, and I was like, oh, maybe that was him, but I doubt it. Why would that guy come looking for me? We never heard from him after being 6 years old. So
yeah, that's so crazy to me. But from what you heard, and with your mom, were they talented athletes? Like, where does your kind of ski prowess come from?
I guess from my mom. She was the one that took us out skiing and riding bikes, and she still goes skiing and riding bikes today. And those are the two things that I'm way into. But skiing's more my passion than biking, because biking's more of a suffer fest, as you may know. But I'd rather do that than hike up a mountain and hike down, and I prefer to hike up a mountain and ski down.
Gotcha. And to getting into skiing, I mean, it all starts in the Midwest with you. And do you start skiing before you moved to Colorado?
Yeah, we started outside of Madison, mostly night skiing.
Okay.
We didn't really have much money, and there was some radio station called like Z104. And they had a card that offered I don't know, it was like $1 night skiing at Cascade Mountain.
Oh, Schmeese's Mountain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're out there freezing your ass off, but you're out there maybe on a school night, so you get a couple hours in. And it was more just learning how to initially ride up a rope tow to figure out how to ski. And once you can make it up the rope tow, then it was like, all right, now I got to get on a lift. And getting on a lift was pretty intimidating when you were young. And it's all icy there. It's probably all man-made snow and on pretty vintage gear.
But did you love it right away? Like, is it something that hooked you in right away? Like, Mom, I got to go tomorrow night and tomorrow night?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Once we became a little more skilled, then I started doing kind of like a weekend club thing with some kids, where we just ride a school bus up to the mountain and get to ski with some new friends, I guess you could call them.
Yeah, you go bell to bell all day long, make some friends, and then come home and do it again if you can.
Yeah, who knows how long we were really there, I guess. But the beginnings, towards the end of being there, that was the first time I got a new pair of skis, and that really changed what we were doing. Because we were on stuff, we'd go to the YMCA ski swap, and you'd be like, oh, look around for a pair of skis that's like your height. And A lot of times it'd be the boots came with the skis, so you were kind of looking for a setup like that.
Yeah.
They were weird bindings. I don't even know what they were. There wasn't like step in Solomons or anything. It was like some metal thing in the toe, and this a special ski straps and no brakes, ridiculous things to lock in, which made it hard when it was super cold when you were a kid trying to put this gear on.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine because it gets really cold there.
Yeah. Well, it probably used to.
Do you guys see global warming, the changes of global warming over there right now? I'm sure you've seen it all over the place where you've traveled.
Yeah, this last year seemed super warm, even here, especially in Europe. And yeah, skis were sticking pretty bad.
But they believe in global warming over there, right? Because here, I don't think we think that's a problem. Or at least our government doesn't.
Everybody does, I think, the skiers anyway.
Yeah, totally.
When you have less powder days. Yeah, it's a lot bigger over there for sure. But because you see the glaciers just melting away. And I don't know if you see what's going on this summer, is like the mountains are just falling down. It's crazy, man. I never really thought I'd be like, oh, yeah, I notice it. But you definitely do now. And people were telling me that when I first started going to Chamonix, like, oh, yeah, already just in these couple of years, this is gone. And you see with some of the lift that they created just to kind of get ahead of it, but they're already behind by putting in that lift.
Well, I'm going to take it back to not global warming. And eventually you moved to Avon, Colorado. Was the reason that your mom wanted to get you and your sister in the mountains, or was there a better job for her, or what was the move for?
Oh, she was chasing the stepdad.
Oh, okay. So were you stoked?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I had a friend that had been to ski at Copper and was showing us photos, and to ski something like what you saw, the size of the mountains and things, was way different than skiing at Devil's Head and Cascade.
Yeah. That
it was like a dream come true. And especially moving over into the Vail Valley. Vail, as a kid, it's the Disneyland of skiing, for just being dropped off and you're let loose in a safety area, It's good times.
Yeah, and eventually you get into Ski Club Vail. How long did that take? Was that like right away when you started ski racing there, or did that take a year or two?
That took a year or two. It was more, I see these kids getting out of school at noon to go skiing. And I'm like, what's this all about? Before that, I was doing some Buddy Warner, where you're like skiing in a group, and then they'd have a couple little races here and there just with the groups of kids. And once I saw these other guys leaving school to go do that, Ski Club Vail, I wanted all about being on that because I didn't want to be sitting in school. I wanted to be skiing.
So that was the inspiration to go ski race, was like, hey, I can get out of school and go ski a little bit earlier than I'd normally be able to do it, and I'm going to do this?
Yeah, because back then we were just weekend warriors. And in middle school, we were getting out I was able to get out on Wednesday and Friday, go train in gates, or if it was snowing, then you'd end up go free skiing. And then once high school hit, it was skiing every day.
And you were able to do that with Vail?
Yeah. They'd have Mondays off of training, but I would still go anyway when it was high school time. Towards the end, I had my whole schedule set up. You had to have certain kind of grades to be, getting out of school, and you have to have them sign off to let you go to ski races. And so it was a cool experience to be traveling around and just be skiing all the time.
I mean, Ski Club Vail is a pretty expensive thing, I would think. And it doesn't sound like you come from all this money by any means, or comes from any money really. So was there ever any pressure to do well in racing because your mom was funding this, or was it just like have a good time, Seth? Or what was the whole kind of motive behind Ski Club Vail? Was it more an expensive babysitter?
I don't think so. I didn't really have the greatest equipment compared to everybody else.
I mean, they're elite, right? Like all those kids are rich and you're not.
Yeah, there was kids that were, there was a private school at Vail, and pretty much anybody that was going there was in the Ski Club Vail. So that was kind of like their afternoon activity, but the classes were very small for those guys. Like my class in middle school graduating was like 68 people. And those kind of guys' classes in the private school were maybe like 8. So
yeah,
it was way, way different. I'm sure today it's completely different, but it was much smaller back then. So yeah, coming from the public school, there was only a few people, not even like 5, it'd be like 2 or 3, or some guys would like move to another town to go racing with some other ski club, like Steamboat a lot. towards the end. And as far as what my mom was doing, we were probably getting a little help from the ski club. But at the same time, she was also gatekeeping the races, because then that would give her some money towards my tuition, if you want to call it that, for the ski club. So she was always out there doing that whenever we had races, or when there was other like higher level races with the FIST kids. And yeah, that was basically how we did it. And she would also go, and just for herself, like, 'cause she loved watching ski racing, she would go and do the World Cup, like Beaver Creek, like stand out there freezing her ass off to be a part of the World Cups. So just for her own thing, she was into it. It's like sometimes she'd be slipping the course, and I think one time she was slipping the course. The one year they made the pistols in a 159, and she was out there slipping the course on those things, and they were all hassling her that they were too wide to be, out there, and because it's so icy, right?
Yeah.
I think those skis are like they're under 100 underfoot. So for the time they seemed wide, but not today.
And then with ski club and all these elite kids, do you feel like an outcast or out of place there because you're not the rich kid?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I had just a few friends, and it was more the people you hung out with there were like the guys that were your ability level, right? Because you're the back of the pack. Like, let's say you're some little dude and you're doing the downhill. Well, you're not up there with Chad Fleischer, man, right? Like, he was in the ski club when I was there.
Oh, wow.
Of course, he's a few years older than me, or like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But, this guy's winning the downhill, and you're like last place, right? So you'd be the guy carrying their stuff down, right? Like, oh, can you carry my clothes down? But then for us, we're like freezing our asses off going back up the lift to get our clothes from our downhill run.
Right.
So you'd hang out with the guys that you were like racing around more than, you'd talk to these guys from time to time because your buddy, his brother was friends with him or whatever. But it was still a very small club. I don't even think there was like 50 people in it, man. But it was definitely segregated by your ability level.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Elan Skis. They produce the best, most quality skis on the market. How do I know? Well, I was at their factory last week, and it is absolutely state-of-the-art. The process and the machines that are used at Elan's factory don't exist anywhere else in the ski industry. And the fact that 99% of the materials are sourced from Europe within 400 kilometers of the factory, and 20% of those materials come from Slovenia, means they really know what they're building their skis with. I've been telling you that there's a reason why Ripstick is the most playful and fun ski in its category, and I let you know that it's made me a better skier, and it will do the same thing for you. Well, now that I've seen the skiers who build those skis and the passion they have for building skis for Elan, there is no factory in China or Dubai or anywhere else on Earth that can compete with what Elan is doing right now. There's a reason a lot of you are skiing on a ski that comes built out of Elan's factory, and that's because they know how to build skis better than anyone else in the ski industry. But that's not the only thing Elan does. They also support cool things like this podcast, Glenn Plake, Stan Ray, and your local ski shop. Why do I bring up your ski shop? Because Elan knows that making the best product with the best athletes is not enough. Supporting the local retailer is so important to keeping skiing and the sport healthy. So next time you're on a ski trip, demo a Ripstick, and trust me, you're going to feel the difference, and you're going to be a better skier, and you're going to want to buy a pair from your local shop after you demo them. To find out everything about Ripstick and all the other Elan products out there, head on over to elanskis.com. Next up, it's your most important piece of equipment for a great ski day. I'm talking about Zip-Fit ski boot liners. For more than 35 years, skiers that want all-day comfort, warmth, and the most precise fit on the market have one of Zip-Fit's 7 different liner styles that molds to their feet and shell. It's game-changing. And this legendary fit system of moldable cork will lock your heel down like never before. Zip-Fits are designed to be customizable, meaning self-molding cork composite can be added or removed as needed. And they're continually adjustable, which means that when they outlast your first boot's shells, you pop them in your new boots and have them mold to them. On top of that, they're the trusted liner of freeride world champion Ben Richards, plus a bunch of other Olympians and World Cuppers, but that shouldn't matter. What does is fit and performance, and if you want the best, you can find out more by heading over to zipfit.com, or even better, ask your local shop about ZipFit. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. In terms of what you wanted to do in life and you're a ski racer at that point, Did you have Olympic dreams of I'm going to be this guy one day? And were you vocal about that?
I think you just kind of kept that to yourself. You were doing, like, of course, everybody has some dream of going to the Olympics back then or something, but eventually you got to the point of realizing like who you were in that world. And it took a long time to gain certain skills and to have breakthroughs that really improved your racing. There's just a lot of time riding these slow lifts. Like today, it's completely different where I was training. There's high-speed quads, but back then you were riding a double fixed grip, and to get to the top was 20 minutes, and now it's probably 6, or 5. You lost a lot of time riding on the chair. But that's what we were there to do, is just pound it out. It's just repetition, and that's kind of stuck with me through my life with doing things like cycling, and you just get into a mode of just go, 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 and that's what you're doing out there.
Well, I've heard you say you're a perfectionist before. In some kind of interview and some kind of research I did, you said that. And is that why you just keep doing something over and over and over until you get it perfect?
Well, you're just trying to be. I don't think you can ever fully achieve perfection because you're always making mistakes.
Right.
Even if you think you're perfect. And yeah, you might get that in your head. And I'm sure I definitely did. But the more you do something, the better you're going to be. And I always try to pass that along with people, that that's up to them if they want to do it or not. But that's what I saw in ski club. It was like, it didn't matter if you won the race, you could have still won by more. It was never good enough. As always, you can do better.
Were you all in with ski racing, like doing everything that you're supposed to do, not partying or anything like that, just trying to be the best?
Yeah, I was doing the dry land training in the winter. Nobody was doing that. Like there'd be sometimes I was just me and the coach doing the training after skiing.
No way.
Like I tried to live it, and doing those things, I had to work harder to get to where I got towards the end. At the end, I was doing better, but I still was not going to go to the World Cup. But I was getting some lower fist points under 100, which to me was a goal that I set. But it wasn't like I went to Junior Olympics or anything like that. But I was just out there to go ski every day. And there'd be times when it would snow powder, and they'd still have us training slalom. You're like, what are we doing, man? This is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And you go over the knoll and just straight to another lift and go free ski for the rest of the day.
How did the coaches feel about that? I mean, did they let you free ski, or did they get pissed off and have a bunch of rules and like, you can't do that? Because eventually I would think you'd get frustrated if it was like that.
Obviously they caught on because they're like, where'd you go or whatever. But I didn't care what they had to say. Especially once I started skiing backcountry. They were trying to stop me from going into the backcountry when I was young, after having a few experiences with one of our coaches taking us backcountry skiing. Once I had that little taste, you don't want to ski around in the resort. It's like, it's one thing when you get a first couple powder runs, and then once it's all tracked out, then you want to go somewhere else. Once I had that little taste, it was like, that's all I wanted to do.
So back then you were just heading out there, probably like blind in terms of any kind of avalanche training or any transceivers or anything, like in the early days, you're just heading out there?
We definitely got into buying a transceiver and having the equipment. I remember we were like, all these kids would, like today, you try to make a ski video of yourself. We were doing the same. And I remember we were screwing around with our beacon, and we didn't really understand how it worked. Like we turned it off, these old Ortovox beacons. And when you turned it off, you had to wait a while to turn it back on. And we couldn't figure that out because we were like staring at this thing. And it was back when you had to put an earphone in your ear. And I don't know if you ever tried one of those.
No, I never used. I saw
you're
them.
walking around on like frozen snow, and you can't even hear the beeps because your boots are so loud, right? And obviously that's not going to happen probably in a real scenario, because there's going to be powder snow or something. But just primitive equipment. And luckily we never had any issues, but people were getting killed out there. You'd hear the stories, but for whatever reason, we thought it was what we should be doing.
Were you doing East Vail laps back then?
Yeah. Mushroom bowls, East Vail. Took my sister one time.
Everybody looks up to people in skiing. A lot of people looked up to you in skiing. Who did you look up to when you were younger? Was there anybody that you enjoyed their style or wanted to be?
Well, I always liked like Herman Zurbriggen and Ingemar Stenmark as far as the ski racing side. And then once we saw of course, everybody loved the Blizzard of Oz. And so then we were into following those guys. Schmidt and Plake and Hattrick. And later down the line, we get to meet those guys and ski with them.
Yeah. And I mean, right now where you live, do you see Plake every once in a while when you're in Chamonix?
I didn't see him this past season, but every once in a while I see him in the left line. But I don't go skiing with this guy. He skis with some other people that I know, but for the most part, it's just like everywhere. Here, I never see these matchstick guys. They live here in town where I live, and some places are a small world. You don't realize it until you don't see the people that you think you would for a long time.
Not everywhere's the Vail Village.
No.
And then what's the best you ever did in racing? And then how did racing end for you?
Well, towards the end of high school, I was starting to get into like sub 100 points.
That was your goal?
Yeah, that was my goal. And then I started to help with some of these, like they would bring you to races locally to help kids lessen their points. Because like you'd start, I don't know how it's like if you start with 1,000 points or something. I don't even remember how the whole system works, but they would have these kids races where all these kids would be stuck with 400 points. So then they go to other races and then they're starting at like the back of the field when you have the terrible conditions, right? You have the ruts and the rough course.
Yep.
So you come to these races because you had some low points to help shed their points down. It's the whole system of how close they finish against you to get points reduced. It's a mathematical game. You know, people get like negative points. I don't know how you paid attention, but
no, not ski racing stuff.
It's a very interesting thing. And a lot of people really focus on that. It's not just about finishing. It's also about points because that shows when you start on the next race.
Yeah. And that all factors in. And then racing ended with you going to help other kids. Like, was there a final, I quit, or was it just like, I'm done with high school and I'm done with ski racing?
Oh yeah. It was, you were just done with racing with high school. I had no aspirations of going to college and racing. It just seemed like too much effort. I wanted to focus on just going skiing.
Was that what college was for you? Was like, I'm going to pick Western State because of the terrain that's down there, and yeah, I'll go to school too, but I'm going to ski?
Well, you know, I don't know if you went to college, but
yeah,
back at the time, I don't think it's really important anymore now, but back then you had to do these ACT and SAT test scores, right? Well, I was like looking at the college here that I went to, which has a different name now. And you don't have to take those tests anymore. They just let you in. And at the time, I didn't have the best test scores. And the two schools I could go to were Western State, which was known as Wasted State, or Fort Lewis in Durango, which was called Fort Loser amongst the people I knew. It was always a joke in high school, but then it was like, okay, well, these are my choices, man. Right? You didn't feel so good about yourself. But I had come to a ski race in Crested Butte in high school or something, and I saw how great the terrain was compared to the Vail area. A lot more steeps and cliffs and things. And that was kind of more the push for me. Like originally I wanted to stay for the first semester and just go to whatever the community college was in the Vail area. But my mom was like, no, you have to go somewhere. So I ended up going to Western. And that wasn't so easy because I didn't have a car or anything. And Gunnison is quite far from Crested Butte. So
you're just hitchhiking all the time?
Yeah. And you're hitchhiking with your skis.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like hitchhiking with a pair of 210s.
Oh, yeah, because it was back in the day when everybody was skiing on long-ass skis.
Yeah. Like in ski racing for GS, you're on 210s, and slalom, you're on 205s.
Yeah, that's great. So what's your craziest hitchhiking experience? Have you been picked up by like a dude with a deer's head bloody on the ground or anything like that?
Well, some kids with like a VW bus, and they slide the door open, and they had a 2-foot bong in there. And there's ripping tubes all the way up to Crested Butte. Then another time I was in some other guy's van. It looked like kind of like the Raper van. And I fell asleep in the guy's car. I had no idea when I woke up, like where I was, what was going on.
That's so weird.
With some weirdo with a beard. Yeah. But when you're young, you know, and you're just doing these things just for the passion of going skiing, you just overlook a lot of it and continue on to the next day.
Well, that first year at school, do you get there and get to the mountain, they start getting snow and start teeing off on everything there?
But it takes a while for them to really get a base up there because it's just rocks everywhere.
Right.
And you need at least 5 feet of snow to get onto these steeps. So maybe just before the winter break, we got to do a little bit of skiing some of the head wall or something. But then it was really when you came back from winter break, like the New Year, it was a good season. So it was really a lot of exploring and really learning the mountain and figuring it out. And I'd seen the extreme competition the year before was the first like U.S. Nationals or something.
Yep.
And I saw that on TV and I was like watching that and I'm like, oh man, I could do that. I can beat these guys. And even that winter, I think I did one pro mogul tour stop at Breckenridge.
Okay.
I raced Holmes and I've been seeing him on TV and I kind of blew my run against him because I gave up what I was going to do for my trick at the bottom. So he just held back because I was going to go for a 720. And he held back because he knew I wasn't going to make it. And I crashed pretty bad, but it was just giving me a taste of all these things that I'd seen on TV.
And there weren't many sevens being thrown in mogul contests back then, were there?
No, not really. There was like that Justin Patno dude would do some sevens and people were doing Daffy Twister spreads. And
yeah.
I think Holmes was doing Screaming Siemens. Maybe he did a 7. I can't remember. You know, even McConkey was involved at the end of the whole mogul scene. So, like, you see these guys, and some of them you'd already met, and then doing the extremes was kind of like a whole new opening to these people that you'd seen in movies like Doug Coombs and Dean Conway, people like this.
Well, the extremes are pretty much, they make your career. They're the launch of Seth Morrison. But I think even before the extremes, did you get sponsored by Elan first? Because it sounds like you were at the extremes on like a pair of Elans. Because I was talking to someone, they're like, yeah, he showed up with like a 190 centimeter pair of Elans. No one knew who he was. And then like he blew everyone's mind. And the Elan thing was stuck out to him. And I know you were part of that brand for maybe a year. But how did that happen?
Well, my one buddy that I ski raced with and went free skiing with a bunch, he was a little bit older than me, this Eric Werble.
Oh, yeah.
He was a sub rep for Mark Lee.
I know Mark Lee.
And Mark Lee, yeah, and he was the Olin rep. So he flowed me some skis.
That had to be pretty sick, right? To get a pair of free skis when you were like nobody at that point?
Oh, yeah. Towards the end of like ski racing, I was able to get a few Kesley skis. That was the only kind of free gear I got besides a grassroots guy, Tom Krebs. He started me on Oakley through Ski Club Vail.
So you were on Oakley forever. A long time before they even really signed you, you were like on their flow.
Yeah, there was a big contingency of people out of Vail that were kind of pushing Oakley around, right? Pat McElveen, who ended up being my team manager at Oakley. There was a lot of guys based out of there that were really pushing Oakley. It was just part of the family, I guess, for the grassroots. But then with Olin, yeah, I got a couple pairs of skis, and I think I was on some like 195s. I had some 203 or something. I had like 2 pairs of skis and skiing on Reichley boots back then, and the 916 binding, Solomon steels that I keep from ski racing. And it's all the stuff that I've always used.
Dude, some guy I know recently, one of Shmeez's friends was telling a story where he bought a pair of those Solomons from someone on eBay, and he said when he got the box, it was from Seth Morrison. And he was like, man, Seth must have had a stockpile of like 20 pairs of bindings and needed to get rid of a pair or 2.
Oh yeah, that's exactly how it works. Because it's like, why should I just hold on to these things or throw them away? I'm not using those things. So there's people out there that want that stuff. I think less and less now, but
like you like certain things, like that binding, that Reichley boot that you eventually went to full tilt. It was like there's certain things that you like that you will do whatever you can to be in them.
Oh yeah, those like that Reichley era when it ended. I just stockpiled as much as I could because they weren't making them anymore. Yeah. And then it took Leventhal to come around and start making the boots again. And I thought I was going to run out. I was getting down to like a couple pairs of decent boots left. Yeah, that's how it's always been. I want to use what I want to use. I'm not just going to sign up for something and, oh, you got to use this, you got to use that. And that's kind of why I've been never signed on to anything after what I was doing because there's all these compromises.
Have you ever had to compromise with any of your products? Because I know like one year, and this isn't a compromise in performance or anything, but I brought a pair of skis to Chile to get you to take a photo with or do something with. And the birds on the skis did not have the yellow beak like they do in Chamonix. And when people ask me if you were ever mad or weren't stoked on me, I always bring up that pair of skis and I'm like, yeah, well, we messed up the graphic. And he took the skis, threw them in a closet, put a towel on them, and didn't look at those skis again for a week. And he finally did do what he was supposed to do and do the video, but he did it all pissed off. He was like, yeah, I'll fucking do it, Powell, but blah, blah, blah. And it was all because the bird's beak wasn't right. I'm sure we eventually got the bird's beak right, or at least I hope they did. But is there any other product things that you were pissed about?
Even those skis, man, like that was a huge compromise, those skis. That was ridiculous.
That was your first flat tail, right?
Yeah. Talk about going back in time compared to what we've been doing. Yeah, that was a side Seth or something.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of years of those skis. And luckily for me, I'm ahead of the game, right, with some kind of test product for next year.
Exactly, yeah.
So I didn't spend a lot of time on those particular skis. But those skis into my pro model, really, because the construction wasn't what people were into. And it wasn't by my choice. It was a K2 decision.
Yeah.
And then once it got changed around, nobody cared anymore because they lost interest.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about your skis in part 2. But in the months leading up to your first US Extremes, I believe that's when you started dyeing your hair. And I've thought about this for a little bit because I've been doing a lot of research on you and just thinking that, like, you're one of those, I don't want to say you're like a recluse or you're quiet, but you're not the most outwardly outgoing all the time unless you're drinking. And then I think you are a little bit more outgoing. But for a person like that to then dye their hair all these different kinds of colors and make themselves stick out, what's the thought process? Like, I don't like to talk to people, but I want everyone to see me and notice me?
It was probably just to be noticed for the skiing that I was doing. And one of my coaches, this guy named Eric Steinberg, he said, if you're going to do anything with your skiing, you're going to have to do something with your hair. And I don't know if that played any part of it, but I had a friend in college, a guy from Burlington, and he was dyeing his hair, and he helped me get set up at the beginning of all that. Going to college, for most people, you find other things and experiment and whatever. So I didn't have any like punk rock friends, or there probably weren't any punk rock people going to Battle Mountain High School. But this guy, Curtis, snowboard dude, he set me up with some Manic Panic hair dye, and that got me going.
And what are the best and worst reactions that random people have said to you about your look over the years?
Oh,
you get a lot, I would think.
Yeah, it depends. Like one time I was going through South Park,
Colorado.
Yeah, like where the cartoon comes from, and some redneck old man there didn't take too kindly to my pink hair, called me a pink-haired at the gas station, and told me to get out of there. And then one time, when I moved to Jackson Hole, I went to the cowboy bar. They told me I was going to get beat up if I came in there.
Have you ever been in a fight because of how you look and people talking shit and then you saying stuff back?
No. It's just always somebody says something and it's either you walk away or whatever they say that never happened. It was going to happen anyway.
It's time for my second sponsor break, and my first sponsor this round is Outdoor Research. And while I have long loved OR because they make the best, most waterproof, warmest outerwear in the world that's engineered and tested right here in the miserable conditions that the Pacific Northwest can deliver, that's just what OR makes in the winter. And while everyone out there knows that OR makes the best lightweight hiking pants ever built, the men's and women's Freewheel Mountain Bike Collection, a collection of high-performance bike apparel, is setting the standard for functional and durable mountain bike gear. Every detail has been thought of, so you don't have to think about the fit of your gear. You can focus on the terrain and getting yourself into your flow state. It's time to return to dirt, and OR has the trail-ready gear to get you out there in comfort and style. To upgrade your fit, head on over to OutdoorResearch.com and check out the Freewheel Collection. And the final sponsor in the history of the Powell Movement is myself. Take it away, Roy.
Hi, I'm Roy Tuscany, the founder of the High Fives Foundation and good friend of podcaster Mike Powell. When Mike told me he was ending his podcast, I was bummed and saddened. Mike is the best at pulling stories out of people, but when he told me about his new venture, interviewofyourlife.com, my mind was blown. While High Fives is a way for me to make a huge impact on people going through what I went through, interviewofyourlife.com is how Mike is going to do something special for you and your family. If you have a loved one and want to capture their story in their voice, Mike's proven interview style will draw out the best in them. I trusted Mike to tell the world my story, and you can trust his process to create a living, breathing, beautiful piece of content that captures your legacy. While Mike says the website won't be live until October 1, I know you can get more information now and get on the recording list sooner than later by emailing Mike at thepowellmovement.com.
And those are all the sponsor ads that you're ever going to hear on this show. Now let's jump back into the podcast. I will take this to the extremes. It's 1993, and like I said, it's not a career-defining event, but a career-starting event because your whole career kind of takes off right from there. Do you remember when you signed up for the comp? Were you like all fired up, like I'm finally going to show these people?
I don't remember any of that.
Just because I knew you said you saw them on TV and you thought that you had a chance, like I could beat these guys. When you're signing up, are you still feeling that way? Like, yeah, Coombs is here and Kreitler's here and Cummings here, but I could win this thing?
Yeah, because I had a home field advantage. I was training on this mountain the whole time, know all the lines. I didn't have any idea where they were going to do the contest.
Right.
But I would just ski where I would normally ski in the venues that they set. And obviously, like I had seen the season before on TV, but that was mostly on this run called the Head Wall. And so you would try to mimic what those guys were doing then. But at these times, we had the conditions, powder. It wasn't cement like it turned into these recent years.
Well, that first season you were there, wasn't it one of those banner seasons at Crested Butte, like one of the better ones on record?
Oh, it was all time. So all the lines were filled in. The event had powder. Like, you see some guys from Jackson Hole come there, and it was just a different style of skiing that you would see from some other resort skiers than the local ones. Because Crested Butte, it's really tight, gets a lot of moguls, and people ski on quite short skis because of that kind of terrain. And so to see some other people with more experience of bigger mountain coming into there and being around that was cool to push you with. So it was fun.
And at this point, are you already rocking a full face helmet?
No. Maybe the first year you had to only wear a helmet on the peak. I don't know if you had to wear a helmet on any of the beginning days. Maybe the following years they made helmets mandatory, but at the beginning they ran it off the peak for the final day. And I think that you had to wear a helmet for that. But.
Well, I was going to ask you a couple helmet questions because you were the one that I know in the beginning wearing a full face helmet. And thinking about that, I mean, you hit gigantic cliffs, you take crazy impacts over the years, and even with a full face and a mouth guard, do you break a lot of teeth in your nose a lot?
That's why I started wearing the helmet and mouth guard.
Because it's happened a lot?
Definitely a lot of knee to face for sure.
Just bloody noses coming into the village?
Yeah. And it wasn't anything about the teeth until later. Like, I've had to get a tooth or two fixed because of that, 20 years later. At the time, I never lost a tooth, but a lot of concussions. Yeah. That's kind of why I got the full face, was once I started doing Lincoln loops and flips, and then trying to incorporate any kind of like a 7 kind of flipping move. Because it's just a recipe for disaster. I mean, you watch these guys on the Free Ride World Tour, they're pushing it and they're going super big, trying to do flipping, spinning tricks, and there's no room for air.
Yeah, none.
And it's so much gyration, it's so much force. You're going to get hurt if you don't land on your feet, really, and you don't have good conditions.
From gigantic cliffs, talking about you breaking your teeth, I wanted to ask you what you think of other people that do gigantic cliffs. 2 people in particular, Jamie Pierre, who's no longer with us, and Julian Carr. Those guys are known for their huge sends without trying to stomp them at all. What does Seth Morrison think about that kind of style?
That's like, to me, it was kind of like that level of like John Treeman going huge. And there's just a certain level of height where it's like, it's impossible. So to me, it wasn't anything I was interested in. I'd seen some bomb holes from, maybe it was Jamie Pierre in Engelberg. You'd be going up the tram and you see take some straight line and then some huge bomb hole, or we were skinning by some place and some other guy tried to imitate one of Jamie's jumps, and you saw the hot tub from Jamie the day before, and this guy tried to do it the next day, and the guy could barely ski back to the resort. He's like, "Oh, I got to sit in the hot tub." my neck hurts. And you're like, yeah, dude, but it's a pancake flat landing. Like, so that wasn't anything I was, of course I have had flat landings, but their style wasn't anything I was going to chase after, let's say. It's fun to watch.
I was just wondering what you thought of people that would hit something huge with no intention of really stomping it, but landing on their hip and then getting up and skiing away. Yeah, I was curious to that.
Well, it's impressive, man. It's impressive. I seen this one guy. There was some little event that was at Snowbird. I can't remember what it was, but this one dude was doing, we were calling them coffin airs. He was doing these lawn dart front flips and just purposely landing on his back. And we were calling them coffin airs because he looked like he was landing in a coffin.
Yep.
When he hit the ground, and the skis would just both go flying. But it was impressive, it got everybody going wild.
Yeah, true.
And it's to do that in front of a crowd is something different. That's for sure. And to see the stuff like what these guys were doing, like what Jamie was doing at Engelberg, you're just like, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to that first contest day, you end up taking second as a nobody. And when that happens, while taking second place is something that you'd eventually get pissed off at, I believe. Can you remember how incredible that second place was?
Oh, yeah, I was stoked, right? Because I knew I could do it. And the problem for me, though, was I was in first place going into that last day. And I don't know how they gave me first or why, because there was other people out there that were skiing way better than I was. But I blew it on the peak day because it was top of the peak at Crested Butte to the bottom of the resort. And the top part was all untracked. But then by the time you got to the 2/3 left to go, it's just moguls the rest of the way. And you're just smoked, man. And there's a time limit, right? But you don't have a sense of time when you're skiing, right? Do you know what 5 minutes is or 3 minutes? And so you're trying just to get to the bottom. But yeah, I blew the last day. That's for sure.
But in the grand scheme of things, you blew the last day. You created a full-on beginning of a career from that. But do you feel personally like you go from an outsider in, maybe not in life, but into wherever, to like finding your tribe, or are you still outside of it?
Oh, I'm still outside of it because of my age.
Oh, yeah. You were, what,
right?
19 and everybody else is 24?
Yeah. Like I was always, with this beginning of my ski career, I was always with older people. So like I couldn't go to the bar, right? Because I wasn't old enough to get in. So for a number of years, I was still just doing my own thing kind of on the side.
And then with the skiing, what's crazy is there's really no ramp up to your career. I mean, yeah, you did ski racing and all that growing up, but your career happened at that contest. And do you think your ski racing background is what sets you apart? Like you were so focused on perfecting your technical ability for so long that your fundamentals just took you to the next level? Or is it just balls?
It's just going free skiing all the time with the racing. And everybody back then had come from racing. There were some mogul people, of course, but that was the meld of those two communities, was putting those together in those extreme events. Because you're in a confined course, or like in the moguls, right? There's like, you're on a certain mogul line. So you had more freedom out there. And just all there was just two events. And you might do some filming. So there wasn't a lot going on like there is today.
True. But those two events, that one you do really well at, the next one I think you go to Alaska, but you leave that first event, the first US Extremes, with Warren Miller wanting to shoot with you and with Raf wanting to shoot with you as well. Real Auction Films, which becomes MSP, right?
Yeah, those guys had been living in Crested Butte that season, and I'd seen them around. So after that Extremes, it was kind of my spring break, I think. So I went and filmed with Warren Miller, and that was a recommendation through Scott Kennett. And I went and filmed at Keystone. It was such a joke, man. Like I was skiing in like size 10 boots, and it was just like all the gear you had to use was really difficult. But that was your first into what you thought, you'd seen, like, what's it going to be like to be working in a ski movie. And I did that with those guys for like a week or 5 days. And then I came back to Crested Butte and filmed with Stephen Murray. And it was a total different vibe, right? It was like, oh, what do you want to do? Compared to like this filming at a resort for the resort.
Right.
Where you're going around with some guy from the marketing from Keystone with a credit card to take you out to lunch. And the rest of the time you're just kind of going through a shot list around the resort. And yeah, of course you would try to incorporate your style and what was going on, but it was a completely different experience.
Then when you go with the MSP guys, which aren't MSP at that point, but you're with those dudes and filming with them, and they pretty much make you the face of their franchise from almost day one. And I talked to them a little bit just to get, a little bit of information. And I was like, when I say there was no ramp up, I'm like, so Seth didn't take a few years to develop or anything because he was like 19. They're like, no, the second we saw him, he was the best skier that we had ever seen already. And we knew he was the future. Could you feel that as well, that you had something that other people might not have?
Not really, because what we were doing, like, nobody knew, right? Like, nobody knew about us.
Yeah, it was underground.
Yeah. So I was just so focused on my little Crested Butte little world out there, jumping off cliffs and doing things. Because that's what I was doing when I was back in Vail, like on powder days. All we wanted to do was go jump off cliffs.
Right.
So it was kind of the same thing in Crested Butte. And when I look at it now, man, I can't imagine jumping off some of the things I was jumping with these conditions today because it's so rocky, right? So I was very lucky that nothing really ever happened out there in that place.
Well, Crested Butte, but then you've also spent a shit ton of time in your life in Alaska, and the first time you spent in Alaska was right after that U.S. Extremes. I think you went to the World Extremes, and I ask people all the time about the pucker factor of Alaska. What was that like for you? I mean, was it like above and beyond anything you'd ever been to?
Oh, yeah. I had no idea what I was getting into there. So for getting second, I got a ski bag and a plane ticket and entry fee. And so everything was covered. All I had to do was pay for my food, I guess. And I flew up there with one of the local girls who got second in the women's division. And so I kind of had a traveling partner. And then once we got there, it was, oh, here, get on this bus. It was like I had an old school bus, and they took you out to go see the venue from the side of the road. And it's like, you have no idea the scale because there's nobody on there. And it was like, oh, yeah, you think you're so great. I'm like, oh, it's not that big. But then the following day, you finally get to put your feet on the snow. And yeah, it was a whole different ball game. And then realizing that the conditions can change so quickly. So we were doing 2 runs. The morning run would be powder, but then the afternoon would get hit with the sun and completely change what you had already experienced. So there was a lot to catch on to, especially at that age. And I've mostly been skiing around on north-facing stuff all the time. So it was challenging to have to ski different aspects with the changing conditions and not realizing it at the time.
And then when you think about your trips to Alaska over the years, I would think maybe not the most important thing, but one of them is having the right guide that will let you go into terrain that you want to go into. And you need the right heli pilot who can actually tow into wherever you want to go as well. But have you had those guides that have just ruined your whole trip? Like, hey, we're spending 17 grand for a fucking movie segment here and you're not letting me ski anything gnarly?
Oh, for sure. It's happened a couple of times. And pilots too.
And what do you do with that? I mean, do you like end up arguing and fighting with them? Or because, I mean, you're there to get work done.
Of course. Yeah, of course. You try to get another pilot. You try to get another guide. You make the people essentially quit, because it doesn't going to work. Because you're going to sit there and going to be sad all day and mad. And they're going to hear about it, and so then eventually something turns around. Or sometimes there's no other option, and you just have to deal with it. I mean, that's happened a couple of times too. Yeah, it's frustrating, and that's a funny thing. At the beginning, we had no money, man. And it was cheap back then, but we had no money, so we barely flew anywhere. But then once you had some money, then it became more expensive, and then there became more nonsense with the guides, the pilots, and you just try to make the most of what you get, I guess. And it's funny to look back at how it started. Like, there was zero regulations compared to today.
Were you there with the tokens where you'd buy a token and go?
Yeah, there was poker chips.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And mostly you were doing road runs because you couldn't afford to go beyond, and they had like little plane drops. This is all in Valdez we're talking here. And that was kind of the beginning of all that. And there wasn't even guides. It was just like, get in and go. Right. And I remember Coons would be hanging around trying to get people to pay for him to go because he knew where to go. He'd be like a guide before there was really guides.
Yeah, that's how he started his whole organization, I feel like, was just first selling himself as a guide and then doing it himself for real.
Exactly. And the helicopters change and all this stuff, this and that. And it's just like when you see this guy Chet flying around in the stump movies. Like we got to fly with that guy. And the guy was the real deal, screaming and yelling at you, you know? That guy was classic. He'd be like doing the heli debriefing, which is super quick, telling you where not to go and be here and there. So he can see you. And he just always keeps saying, like, if you go back there and you hit the tail rotor, everybody dies but me. Right? Like, there's always everybody dies but him. Like, if your skis go in like, put your skis up to the blades, like all this funny thing this guy would say. A lot of characters, man, out there. That's for sure.
Speaking of characters, or how your character has developed over the years, when you started at 17, I don't think you partied much at all. I think you were really focused on skiing and being better and focused on your body and stuff like that. But I met you in 1998. I had to kick you out of a bar for having too much fun. And then when I did, you were all mad and looked at me. He's like, hey, you want to make out or something like that? I thought it was really funny because I had years of stories of saying, yeah, I kicked Seth Morrison out of a bar. And then he asked me to make out. I didn't make out with him. But when did you go from fully focused Seth to partying Seth?
It goes back to going to college, man.
I guess everybody does that.
So, yeah. It wasn't like it was easy for us to get alcohol as it was, or I didn't even had any money anyway. So, yeah, that was kind of just where it started for me. But it wasn't anything crazy because you just couldn't afford it, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And you couldn't get it, right? And it's like I had some of my buddies. It's always the same thing. Like when the kids come to college and got us in, all these kids come to this small little town and they come from a big city and they think they can do the city things there. But they quickly find out that they can't because you're completely obvious in this little town. So there's one guy, he made some fake IDs. Like, there's more to the story. But anyway, he made some fake IDs for my friends. And I didn't get one because I couldn't afford one. And we all went to a bar in Crested Butte. And back then it was like, you hear all these stories like, oh, yeah, it doesn't even matter if it's you on the photo, just get an ID. And maybe it was like that until later on, once they started catching all these kids coming up from the college. And all my friends, anyway, we were sitting at a place and they ordered up some beers and instantly they were just on it. Like, all these IDs are fake. Call the cops. And one of the guys, the guy that made them was there and he'd been making like, 100 of these IDs. And this guy got in huge trouble because he like stolen the laminations for the license. So it was kind of just like, boom, another game ender for the party crew, right? And I couldn't afford it anyway.
You know, with not being able to afford it, in the beginning, you're doing these extreme comps, you're going to Alaska, people are starting to figure out who you are, you're filming with MSP, but at the same time, was that when you're working at Taco Bell and construction and shit in the summer?
Yeah, I was financing my winter with a credit card and pay it back with construction. I only worked at Taco Bell briefly when I lived in Jackson Hole because I had moved there and I didn't realize when the season started there. And there was skiing already going on in Colorado when I moved there. But here I am sitting in Wyoming with no skiing to do because they didn't open until like Thanksgiving. So, yeah, I had to do something. I figured Taco Bell was easy enough, some shithead job where you just punch in, punch out.
Well, you just said something about, not being able to ski at Thanksgiving. You're one of those dudes that once it opens, even if it's a vein, you usually go, right?
Yeah, but not anymore. I haven't had a ski pass in the USA for 8 years now. I just backcountry ski and I'm totally over the white ribbon of death. Like when I go to Chamonix at the beginning of the season, I'm there for the opening, but it's usually to go touring around somewhere or you're skiing on a groomed run because it's a whiteout. I'm not trying to get like 250 days in anymore, right?
But there was a time, right, that you did. Like, how many is the most days you think you've ever had in a season?
At least 250.
That's insane, man.
Or more, because sometimes you start skiing in October at Loveland and then carry the season into May, like with Alaska. And then you come home, have like a month and a half off or something. And then you're New Zealand, South America. And maybe you go ping-ponging to a few of those trips for the sponsors. There wasn't many solo trips. The first ones definitely were, but usually it was tied into some sponsor trips because of the costs.
Yep.
But yeah, it was a lot of days. But it's a lot different now, man. I'll tell you that. Went from doing all that to doing it way differently. That's for sure.
All right. Well, one thing that did start changing for you is, we talked about you did a little time at Taco Bell. You did a lot of time in construction. You paid off your credit cards that way. But you signed with K2 in 94. And when you get on that program, did that give you enough money to quit working, or did you still have to work?
Yeah, I can't really remember. Yeah, life was pretty cheap back then compared to today. And I didn't have a car for the longest time. So yeah, I was probably just living like a dirtbag, that's for sure. And even when I did have my first car, it was a stupid car to have anyway. But
what was that, the Cadillac?
Yeah, I don't think I had to work. It's always been trying not to have a real job, because it's like it always comes to the point where ski season comes and you got to go, hey, man, to the boss, I got to go skiing, man. And that's sort of similar to some of the offers I've gotten from some of these ski companies in recent years. It's like they tell you to get a job. They want you to have a job to make it seem like you're like a normal person selling skis to normal skier people. But if you're going to be a skier, man, like a pro skier, you have to live it. And that's what I tried to do as long as I could.
You told me once somehow Treadway came up and we were talking about being a pro skier, and your words were something to the effect of, that dude's not a pro skier, he works in the summer. And I was like, huh? And he's like, yeah, man, if you're a pro skier, skiing pays for everything. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, as long as you're doing the pro skier job. Being a pro skier isn't going skiing. Being a pro skier is going to the shops, going on the movie tours, and going to the gym and living it, man. Like everything you're doing, like people contact you for information, you're giving it to them. You're contacting magazines to get into the magazines. You're contacting new sponsors to get more money. It's a job. It's not about skiing.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of other things. But the skiing part with you, I mean, everybody loved your image and wanted to meet you and see you too because of your skiing. Because anybody I talk to, when you look at what you do, your skiing stands out from anyone who has been around in my generation, I feel like. And so the skiing to us matters a lot, but to you, the skiing is what you want to do, but what you don't get to do.
Yes, it's a compromise. That's for sure. And there's some things that I missed. I said no to things, and definitely towards the end, I was saying no to a lot of things so I could just keep skiing.
Because that's what you love, right? What it's all about to you at the end of the day, I mean, for almost everyone, it's all about skiing, but you would ski, like you said, 250 days back in the day. I remember when you would say that you were skiing like the vein of death or whatever, ribbon of death, and I would just think like, why would Seth Morrison do that on October 31st, the first day it's open, when he can just wait a couple of weeks? And it's just because like Seth Morrison loves skiing so much he has to.
It's that, but you got to realize, like, you got to train, man. This isn't just you get off the couch and go and do these things.
True.
Right? Like, you have to be in shape. You have to train. And yeah, skiing on the white ribbon of death, that's one thing. But when you're starting off after you miss some time or you have an injury, it's like, you need to have as much training as possible. You know? I don't know if you've ever watched like that Marshall Hersher guy before a race when he was racing. This guy's doing push-ups at the starting gate, right? Like that guy's doing all these sport cord things, doing sit-ups. Like this guy's like a workout machine. And that's what it takes. You have to do as much as you can, and especially at the preseason, because you're going to miss some days because you have to go traveling for some sponsor commitments. And that might not involve skiing, or if it is, you're not really skiing. You're kind of more standing around. So yeah, you're trying to get as much as you can in. And then when you're going on these other traveling experiences, maybe you try to go a little earlier or stay a little later so you have your own personal time, because you've never been there. And the whole idea is to try to get some good conditions, right?
Right.
Not every day is a powder day. So you got to take as much as you can.
And so we're going to get towards where I'm going to say that we'll get to inappropriate questions in a bit, but I want to cover a couple more things before we get there. So we're not going to talk too much more about contests, but you got screwed in many contests over the years. It was like the one year I think you skied head wall, you straight lined it, and everyone shit their pants. People still talk about it, but I think you might have ended up fourth that year or second that year. But I don't think you ever really won. You were always like second or third or in there. And how frustrating was that to you? Because I mean, there was one year you like took your shirt off, you gave the finger to everybody, and you're like, "Fuck you." People thought you should have won these contests, and you didn't. Like, what do you do?
I just bury it. Like when the contest came to an end, it had nothing to do with that. It was just like, oh, I'm over this, because I remember it kind of was like X Games or something in Crested Butte, the first one they ever did, Winter X Games. And I got hurt in that, but I was trying to do like, I don't know if it was like a free ride world tour at the beginning. And I competed in Canada. I did okay. I was maybe 5th place or something. But that was kind of my plan because there was nothing really to do, right? And maybe I was like having arguments with the matchstick guys, and I was like, I need something to do. You know, I'm not going to film with these dudes. I got to have something to do with my season. And getting all these second places in Crested Butte, it was just, I was trying to push my skiing into a different level than maybe I wasn't listening to what they were saying in the judges meeting, like what they wanted to see. And I was just out there to do my thing.
Right.
So that's why maybe I wasn't getting the place that I thought I should have. And I was just out there for the shock value, right? And it's like I say, you don't know how long something is to get down. So you're going to go as fast as you can, right? Especially if you have the conditions. And then when you're skiing in your backyard and you have the conditions and you've been skiing out there when it was cement and you had to make 100 turns, but then it's 2 feet of powder and you can just straight line everything. Well, then it's a different playing field. But other people, they don't have that opportunity because they don't ski there every day like I did. Right. So yeah. I would look at it like, I should be this. But, you know, I came from ski racing and the Vail Valley where everybody thinks they're the greatest. So that was stuck in my head too. Right. You think you're the best, but maybe you think you're better. You're not as good as you think you are. But I was always trying to be number one when I was doing that. But it was just all we had. Right. There was some filming. There was barely any magazines, and that's what you had. But you're in your own little world, right? The only people that care are the people in that world.
Yes.
So really, when you look out from the whole world of skiing, nobody knows what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling a guy I work with who's a hardcore snowboarder. I'm relating that no one knows what you're doing. He's like, snowboarded forever, and he knows anybody that I ever interview snowboard-wise. And I'm like, dude, I'm doing my last interview today. I've been pretty good about not telling too many people. And he's like, who? I'm like, Seth Morrison. And he's just like, question marks. I'm like, I don't know. Think Terje, like a legendary dude in our sport. But it's just funny that you only know it if you're in it, and everybody in it knows you. But it was just funny that he wasn't in it and he didn't know you. I don't know where I'm going with that.
It makes sense, man. Yeah, I love watching the Challenger series. These kids, the young up and comers for the Freeride World Tour.
Yep.
These guys are in their own world. Nobody knows who these dudes are. And nobody cares, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally true.
Right, because I'm into it. That's all that matters is I'm into it.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's cool to watch. So one thing that I need to talk about, well, I guess before I need to talk about it, first I'm going to say you get signed by Oakley, and then you have K2 and Oakley and a bunch of other people, and then you do a photo shoot and you break your ankle. And does it feel like you could almost lose everything you had before it even totally took off because you got hurt?
It was more just missing the ski season. There wasn't really anything anyway at the time, right? Like I didn't think of like, I'm going to lose my sponsors and this kind of thing. It was more just like missing the season. And the beginning years of what was going on was very minimal until Freeze Magazine came along. Like we didn't have a lot of trips. Maybe you do 2 trips a year kind of thing. It was mostly local filming, and you try to do some events, and it wasn't what it turned into be with all the kinds of traveling around later on. But it was more just depression of missing a ski season and digressing, right? Like everybody else is going to go beyond me, like whatever I was doing.
Yeah, and that was a pivotal time too.
Yeah, it was, I don't know if there was fat skis coming in yet, but it was kind of around then. It was a big change once we got off those race skis, that's for sure.
For sure. So you get yourself back. It's the summertime, and you need to get some footage for the MSP movie. You end up going to Chile with Greg Harms, T.R. Youngstrom, Steve Winter, the whole MSP crew. While I know a helicopter crash isn't fun to talk about, and I'm not going to talk about it that much, was it like 1 minute, it's all stoke, and you guys are in the air, and then everything happens so fast, and you don't even remember what happened?
Exactly. I just kind of remember there was a lot of scurrying to get on the chopper, because nobody was ready. The chopper came from the city and came and landed at the parking or something in Portillo. And there was no organization of like who was going first kind of thing. It was just like, oh, you want to go? So-and-so's not here yet. I think like Brant Moles was there. Maybe Dave Swanwick. Can't remember. And Wendy Fisher. So yeah, I was just like, boom, get in. And we had maybe done a little filming the day when we arrived just in the ski resort of Portillo. And then, yeah, flying out there. And it was like, I think we were just like circling around like, oh, this is where we're going. And then just dropped out of the sky like with the mechanical. And I just remember like looking up at the rotors. Maybe there was a bang or something. Yeah. I don't remember much from after that, except for ending up in the hospital. I was rooming with Greg Harms in there. And yeah, it was a crazy experience. And, and to see like, even what happened to Greg.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago. And it's part of the game, man. It's part of the game.
Did you and Greg have a bond like over the years because of that incident that happened 30 years ago or something like that? And that make it even more heavy losing him when his accident happened?
I just look at his accident and it's like the guy kept going and he took it to another level on his own, right?
Yeah.
Starting his own business and the things that he was doing with Travis Rice, I guess, and up there and Tordrillos. And it's just, you're out there all that time, man. Eventually something's bound to happen, right? It's the same thing with doing this big mountain skiing. I ski around Chamonix. There's guys that do some run 100 times and then that's what gets them, So it's not about like complacency or anything. It's just bad timing, bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, that just sounded like total bad luck. Like you pick the right seat, you live. You pick the wrong seat, you don't live. And it's unfortunate that TR died. I think the pilot died too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it totally sucks. I don't even think that was your first death, though. I think someone died in Alaska when you were like at your worlds up there. They did a run before you and something happened. I'm not 100%. But with death like that, what does it do to your mentality at 19, 20 years old or whatever you are?
I think that guy's name was Wilbur Madsen, the guy in Valdez. I skied with him the day before, did a heli run on the Diamond Peak with that guy. I think he was from Steamboat or something. This guy was like jumping around all over the place. Like, it was wild. And he accidentally got like a little avalanche, pulled him off the cornice. And you were watching the first guy come down and it was some dude from Anchorage. This is on Odyssey in Valdez. And the guy who was coming down was a skier and a snowboarder. So he did the King of the Mountain as well on the snowboard. Huh. So this guy had a lot of experience of Alaska mountains. So it's interesting to watch this guy. You're watching some people the first time you're in Alaska come down. And as he's going, all of a sudden this avalanche come off a cornice at the top. And that was the guy, the Wilbur dude, walked to the edge of the cornice, like the top 6 inches pulled off and took him. And there was some ski patrols positioned. I think at that time they used the Crested Butte ski patrols positioned underneath the cliff, their backs against the cliff. And this avalanche came flying over them. And then it was chasing this guy, the first contestant, the guy from Anchorage. And you're like, oh man, he's going to get taken. And then all of a sudden you see some body come flying out. And it's like, whoa, must have been one of those ski patrols, But sure enough, it ended up being this guy. And he was just laying there. And this is the first guy who just came down the run, man. So you're just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And Dean Cummings starts freaking out. And he goes like running up the mountain to get to this guy. And the guy's dead, man. Right? And so they fly the chopper in. They take this guy away. And they continue the event. And they're like, oh, you got to watch out. There's a blood spot down there. Don't go skiing through there. You're like, oh, thanks for the tip. So then, at the end of the day, they had a full debrief about what to do. Like if we should continue on. And like, I don't know what's going on, man. Right? This is my first time there.
Yeah.
I had never been to Alaska. I've never been in this environment. Like it's so hard to absorb how to feel about what's going on. They were offering to talk to a psychiatrist if you wanted to and things like this. And everybody just said, let's just keep going, right? It's just super weird to talk about that or think about what you should have really done, I guess it's selfish to continue on.
But that's a heavy thing to happen in your first trip up there.
Yeah. A lot of people have gone over the years, man. And I'm trying not to be one of them.
Yeah. And what's your relationship with helicopters? I mean, I know you've done them a lot more over your life, but did it take a couple of years to get back in them?
No, man. I was right back in. Like that January or December or something, I had to go do some filming in Pemberton. I was right back in, man. And maybe like the first flight, you're in some little sketch ranger, the one main blade kind of small helicopter.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things from that accident that came into play. Like you didn't realize how much elevation comes into the equation because it's very high elevation there in Portillo. versus where we normally fly, which like in Portillo, I think we were like at 14,000 feet or something, or 13,000 feet. And mostly we get up to like the highest you get into Alaska. It's like 7.5, you know, in Canada, it's like 6,000. So you didn't realize
how thin the air is.
Yeah, what you're getting yourself into. And the choppers and everything, you know, you just kind of take things for granted. And nowadays it's a lot of B3 A stars, which are very powerful, but still those things crash.
Well, that is all we're going to talk about helicopter crashing and dying right now, Seth. I'm going to call it for part 1 of our podcast. In part 2, I have a feeling we're going to burn down a lot of shit. But before we do that, we need to get to inappropriate questions. And you know that I chatted with Lhotse Merriam Hawk last night. And I was like, Lhotse, you texted him? She's like, yeah. I'm like, why? He's not supposed to know. But either way, she had some questions. She has one question for you. Then I'm bringing in Pep Fujas as well with a question, and Mike Jaquet as well for a question, and those will be your 3 inappropriate questions for round 1 of this podcast. And are you ready for question number 1 from who is? I'll start with Jaquet.
I don't know. Okay.
Hey, Seth. We've known each other a long time, and I'm hoping that you spent some time on this podcast talking about the late 90s. Speaking of which, that's my first question, how much you remember, hopefully everything. We very first met in about 1996 in the summer. I was living in Manhattan Beach, and I had just kind of had the idea for Freeze Magazine, and you came out to visit me, which was awesome, and just a couple hours later, you made a decision to jump in a car with me and my roommates and head to Ensenada, Mexico for a little revelry. And about 3, 4, 5 hours after that decision, we found ourselves running from a bunch of Marines and then running from a bunch of Federales. So I'm wondering if you remember that story and care to tell the good people out there what got us into that predicament of being chased down the beach in Ensenada, Mexico with a bunch of Marines that wanted to kill us and then Federales who wanted to arrest us.
All right, we're not going to talk about any of your other troubles, so we will just talk about this one.
I don't remember all that story. I mean, I remember being there. This was a time when I had broken my ankle again. So I had the spring off. And I remember it probably had something to do with being drunk in a bar. That's for sure. Because I remember the one thing I remember doing was like, these guys were trying to sell you fireworks on the street. And I was like, fine, dude, buy that gigantic bottle rocket, but you got to launch it out of your hand to the guy who was selling it. But out of the rest of what he's talking about, I have no idea how that would have happened, but other than being a drunk idiot at the bar. That's for sure.
All right. Well, we will let that one go for question number 1. I will jump into question number 2. I think this one is going to be Pep Fujas.
Hey, Seth. How's it going? It's been a while. I think I've had 2 more kids since I last saw you. I actually had to ponder for a second when it was the last time I saw you. And come to think about it, it was about 5 years ago. I was riding my dirt bike, over from Aspen to Crested Butte with Matt Sturbins, and I happened to drop my tool bag off of my bike and had to double back, and so I decided I'd meet up with Sturbins on another trail. And I saw a biker coming up the hill, and lo and behold, when he got closer, I noticed it was you. Remember, you proceeded to call me a pussy for being on a dirt bike. And that was about the last interaction I've had with you. But here I am. Mike has asked me to ask an inappropriate question. First ones were deemed too inappropriate. First one was, if you were to have sex with any one of the Sex Pistols, who would it be? But that was ruled too inappropriate. So here goes. Inappropriate question number 1 is, if the cameras were not on, would you still hate Huck? I think that's the only one that I get. I think you just have one inappropriate question. Well, I hope all is well with you. You're enjoying some Fernet Branca wherever you are and enjoying life.
So there's the question. I would just want to preface that with, it wasn't that inappropriate question, which Sex Pistol would you sleep with, is too inappropriate. It just wasn't going to tell a story. Like, which Sex Pistol would you sleep with? Would you like to look in the mirror and sleep with Sid Vicious, or would be there someone else?
That's a weird question,
right?
Man. Yeah. That is, what does it have to do with anything?
Well, the questions really don't have to do with anything, so I don't punish him for that.
I don't know.
But the hate huck question. So first, what is the hate huck?
Oh, well, it's just this coined term for being mad and going big, right? Because there's a lot of times you're out there trying to do this filming stuff and people are pissing you off, or you're pissed off at yourself or the conditions or whatever. So just taking your hate into the huck. And to answer his question, I was hate hucking before the cameras were rolling. So they just became larger as it went along, as I got more skilled with what I was doing and trying to take what I was doing to some other level. But yeah, I guess maybe towards the end, that's like if you hear about rock climbers doing some crazy ascent and it's because of like a relationship that they're in, and maybe some of my hucks were because of that, like a suicide attempt.
And if it goes wrong, then they can just be upset for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go with your final inappropriate question.
Let's go with, well, I've heard rumors of a trip that had a fire poker and a burning incident, and I don't know whether it's true or not. Tell us if you've ever branded someone with a fire poker.
Yeah, I don't know anything about branding of anybody with a fire poker.
Okay.
I thought she was getting towards some question. There was some time I did something to Kreitler, and obviously it was a night at the bar, and I woke up and the guy was trying to stick a fire extinguisher in my ass. But that's about...
Wait, Kreitler was?
Yeah. I think it was like one of those water ones up in Canada or something. Getting back at me for doing something. Maybe that's it. I'm not really sure. Once you go past a certain time of the clock in the night, it's hard to remember, man.
Dude, I've never met anybody who had a fire extinguisher up their ass. Gay or straight. So there you go. That's Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And we will have part 2 coming next week, and it's really an honor to have you on here. Sure, I consider you a friend, and I don't know if you like me or not half the time, but I do think you like me. But you are so much more to me than just skiing. You're like the tip of the spear that made skiing cool again. Like while there was Coombs and Hat Trip and Plake and all of them, you were the catalyst that made it all cool in the modern ski area. I'm excited to do part 2 with you. Maybe we should change the time and do a drinking interview, but we don't have to because it's probably safer not to. So I thank you for your time and look forward to part 2.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll talk to you on the next one. All we're trying to do is have a good time.
So that was part 1 with Seth Morrison. And I will say, while I've had so many cool moments on this podcast, having Seth say, "I'm doing this for you, bro," I don't know if you could hear it in my voice, but I was on the verge of tears. But I was quickly able to pull my shit together and do the interview, and Seth is awesome. The dude is always pigeonholed as being quiet or shy, or maybe he is in public. But now that I think about it, Seth has been paid to spend a lot of time with me over the years. The first time I was a K2 ambassador driving a van and trailer around the mid-Atlantic for K2 skis and skates. And there was a Kahlua half-pipe jam going on, and the K2 factory team was already at the event that was happening at Loon Mountain or somewhere like that. I can't remember. But my job was to pick up Seth Morrison from the airport and take him to this event, and we were going to show up a little late. I was thinking, this is going to be awkward. I don't know this guy, but I've kicked him out of a bar once. But we have a 3-hour drive ahead of us, and it could be uncomfortable. So I pick Seth up, and I can't remember what color his hair was, but it was a color. And before we start driving, or maybe while we were driving, I can't remember because this was so long ago, I offered Seth a packed bubbler that I had with me. And that broke the ice. And I don't remember what we talked about, but I remember we talked the whole ride, and I was like, this dude is cool. When we got to the event, everyone was already seated in this banquet room, and everyone was waiting for Seth to get there. When we arrived, they shuffled us to this area right next to the stage, and they announced that the final K2 factory team athletes for the Kahlua Halfpipe Jam, Seth Morrison and Mike Powell, had finally arrived. And they brought us up on stage, and that felt pretty cool for me because I was definitely not a pro athlete or a pro anything, and I was able to stand on stage with Seth Morrison. We were both like 23 or 24 at that point, and it was pretty cool. Then over the years, we did plenty of photo shoots and marketing stuff together, but the most time I ever spent with Seth was on a motorcycle trip. K2 rented 24 Harley Davidsons and brought 20 dealers from Europe for a ride of a lifetime through the Pacific Northwest. The athletes on the trip were Shane McConkey and Seth Morrison. Shane was all about riding a motorcycle on the trip, but not Seth. He's like, I'll go on that trip, but I'm not going to wreck myself on a Harley. Ski season is coming up. And me, I wasn't riding a motorcycle because I had injured my thumb at Camp K2 and I had a pin in it at that time, which the government paid for because I was at a work event and I got LNI. So I was stuck driving K2 Charlie, the support RV that followed the crew, and Seth was shotgun the whole time. I feel like Seth and I spent 20 hours in that RV sweating our asses off when it was ridiculously hot. But we were almost laughing our asses off when the motorcycle crew, known as the Spread Eagles, had to drive up Mount Hood in an absolute blizzard in June. And maybe all the time that I spent with Seth was why he had no problem talking in this podcast. But I think it's more that when Seth says he's going to do something, he does it, and he doesn't half-ass it ever. He was the most professional skier that I've ever worked with in terms of how quickly he got back to people, how thoughtful the information that he shared was, and how he dealt with his fans. All the stuff he doesn't seem like he likes to do, he's the best at. And no other skier I've worked with, maybe outside of Plake, was like that. But in round 2 of the podcast, there's so much more that we need to talk about, and I'm going to pick and choose where we go to get the answers to the questions that we all want to know. And while I'm sad that this is my second to last outro, it's hard to be sad when I have the guest I've always wanted to have on. And for the first time, other than our phone call a few months ago, he's not being paid to hang out with me or talk to me. That's the podcast. At this point, I want to thank all of you for listening. You're the reason I do this. Well, I also like talking on a microphone, interviewing interesting people, and I like the money that comes along with it. And speaking of money, I also need to thank my incredible sponsors who make this podcast happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, and Zip Fit Ski Boot Liners. They also make footbeds as well. Thank you very much, and have a great week, everyone.